Hello all. Today we will be making an expose of one of my favorite games of all time, um, and one of the most unique MS-DOS based releases, um, and also the forefather of many modern games in a way. And we are going to look at a game called SEAL Team. This game could highly likely be considered the grandfather of the soldier sim genre, if you wish. A game genre that today is quite prolific and sometimes also referred to as a tactical shooter. Notably, games in this genre are Ghost Recon and Rogue Spear, and perhaps the most long-running Operation Flashpoint that then evolved into ARMA, a series you probably know, and now the golden standard for the combined arms simulation genre. But this is more or less where it all began. This game was released in 1993, which is startling to think about. And at that time, it had no such contemporaries to measure itself against. It was one of a kind at the time, but sadly, perhaps also due to that, it had very little commercial success. However, it included all of the things that we today associate with advanced MILSIM or military simulation offerings, such as formations, calling in combined arms support, tactical planning, team management, and a variety of realistic weapons and ammo, including physics like bullet drop and wind shear at longer firing ranges, which was to be seen. It's to be seen as very, very advanced for 1993. The idea was basically to take a flight simulation engine of the time and put it at ground level. This is the core of the idea behind this game, and then center it around the US SEAL team operating in Vietnam. So it takes place in the Vietnam War, which itself is not an oft-used scenario. This setting itself is, like I said, is not very common, and at least not until the fantastic Viet Cong game popularized the setting again many years later. In itself a very good game, but much later than this. The game, SEAL Team, was designed by Andre Gagnon, Paul Grace, and Sonny Hayes-Ebert, with the programming duties being handled by Gagnon and Hayes-Ebert. It also features a great musical score composed by George Alistair Sanger, which is it's one of the best gaming scores I've heard in terms of MIDI sound. Gagnon had previously worked at Lockheed and at Dynamics, and he was a very skilled programmer who also worked on the LHX Attack Shopper simulator. So he had very high skills in 3D engine design, and combined with the desire to make a ground-based simulator is what made SEAL Team unique. And Electronic Arts was the publisher, and they put it out for sale in a lavish folio cover box across all markets in 1993. And in an alternative universe, this game would have been acknowledged for what it accomplished, yet it was almost completely unnoticed commercially, which is very, very sad, because in many ways it was very ahead of its time and a very advanced game for its time, and many, like I said, many of the things that you would find in modern milsim games, such as the now very popular ARMA, of course, can be seen in this game. The The 3D game engine used in SEAL Team was highly advanced for its time. It features some great view distances and filled polygonal objects, as you can see here, and some physics such as bullet drop and wind, as well as a day and night cycle. The game engine also allows for true use of AI combined armed supports with a variety of support units ranging from planes to choppers and boats serving as fire support, as well as insertion and extraction vehicles for your team. You can control all of this from the interactive command menu. Also, something that games like ARMA, for instance, would later make use of. Operation Flashpoint, in particular, introduced this concept. And the engine also supports splitting the team and letting the AI take control of a sub-team following your waypoints and tactical plan, something that would later emerge in the modern era of the so-called tactical shooter. And the rendering speed is very impressive, and on even a rather modest 486. It's running here on a 486 DX4 100, but even on a more modest 486, the simulation is fast and smooth. The game engine uses a gradient ground fill routine, which is then overlaid with polygonal objects like houses and trees and roads and booby traps that you will hopefully spot and disarm. The soldiers themselves are angled sprites the same way that, say, Doom renders its enemies. But the detail level is very good, and with even the little booby trap trip wires being rendered between little sticks that have been rigged to, for instance. And if you fall over them, then naturally that'll be a bad thing. And LHX Attack Shopper is, of course, one root of the tech seen here, given Gagnon's history with that development. But the most obvious ancestor technically is Gagnon's F-14 Tomcat from 1990, which was published by Activision. Because SEAL Team is, if you look at it, is very clearly derived from that technology. And at times it feels like F-14 Tomcat, but placed on the ground. However, a flight simulator is a much more sterile environment than what was needed to provide a simulation of ground combat. So the years of additional refinement made the tech much smoother and more detailed and capable of rendering more objects, and it had to be rendered at sufficient speeds. For the time, the game stands as a great technical achievement, both in the level of simulation that it offers as well as the speed at which it runs. The environment design may feel a bit flat, though, due to the lack of slopes and heights, and the jungle is a lot more sparse than what one would expect, as you can see here. The vegetation that is in fact there does, however, work as you would expect to conceal you from the enemy, and you can make use of this for ambushes, which itself is an impressive feature for the time. And the engine has a line of sight system that works for both targeting and spotting, as well as for determining possible hits. All in all, it was very impressive for 1993, and perhaps a little too advanced for commercial success, because all of the controls and the keyboard inputs and the way you control your squad and the tactical menu, it's not what people would be used to, or that level of detail of the simulation is not exactly what people would be used to in 1993. So that could have played a part in its today rather obscure state, but status. But even even that being said, you can see here that it is clearly a grandfather of the modern tactical shooter. And then, of course, like I said, Operation Flashpoint, which would then become ARMA, which today is a massive, at least a massive cooperative military simulation phenomenon. But it can all be more or less traced back to the embryo state of that type of simulation, which can clearly be seen here with one of its earliest, if not the earliest, examples of this. And as you can see here, the game engine also can differentiate. It uses hand signals as well, as you can see, to signal to your team where different things. And it also makes a difference between friendly targets, civilian targets, and enemy targets. So it can handle the AI of civilians as they occupy the combat zone, as well as it handles the AI of the enemy. So civilians will, of course, attempt to flee from the combat zone. You can also utilize this because the enemy AI will tend to not want to fire at civilians if they can avoid it. So you can make use of that as well to your advantage. Another thing we must mention is, of course, the great manual included with the game, some scans of which you can see here, detailing everything from gameplay specifics down to detailed information of support vehicles and weaponry used in the game, complete with pictures and statistics and a lot of background information in itself about SEAL team operations during the Vietnam War. And it's a very extensive and interesting manual in itself. So like really good manuals of old, it includes many non-game related information as well as much detail as you could possibly need in order to actually figure out how to run the simulation in the best possible way. The game itself contains a multitude of mission types and a longer campaign starting in the year 1966 and spanning for the duration of the war effort. And the content of the game and the campaigns were being produced in the collaboration with military consultants and so on to get the best possible accuracy. So there were military consultants involved in the development of the game. In the beginning of the campaign, you don't have all equipment available yet, as more weapons become available later in the war, as was the case in real life. And you will also manage your team and choose between different soldiers, and you can detail plan all the loadouts as well prior to a mission in a campaign. So there are a number of different mission types ranging from observation to demolition to ambush missions and so on. So there's a great variety of missions available to you in the campaign, and that keeps the campaign interesting and varied, including the demolition and the kidnapping, if you will, or the missions where you need to escort specific captives. That keeps the gameplay interesting, and you also have various types of support available, such as helicopter strikes and so on, that you can call in using the tactical map mode during the mission. So apart from the campaign, you also have the possibility, of course, to play single missions where you can choose the date and thus the mission type. But the meat of the gameplay is in the long campaign mode. Regardless, every mission will begin with the extended briefing session, which you see here, which is presented in full 3D visuals, as you just saw. And you also have the marching orders here, where you can change your equipment and so on. And you can also look at the details for the patrol route, the possible enemy locations, insertion and extraction point, and so on. And also, of course, then look at the 3D rendered briefing to get a picture of the environment where the mission is going to take place. And after studying the briefing and pressing next, you are treated to the famous SEAL Bull session, where SEALs talk, well, bull, on the way out to the mission. Then you are placed in the insertion craft, and the automated insertion sequence will begin. Then you can choose to reinsert at a different location or start your patrol. So after the insertion, you are then pretty much have to take it from the point where you insert, but you can reinsert. Here we can see a mission featuring a helicopter insertion. So the mission starts with your Navy SEALs boarding the helicopter and preparing for insertion. As this is an observation mission, the goal of the mission is to observe an enemy hamlet, and to do that, the SEALs are first airlifted into the general area, and then the insertion phase will begin. So this is the insertion phase, where we have now inserted our team, and the gameplay will then begin. And you have a choice here between first and third person view. So this is the third person view, and this is the first person view. The targeting is automatic, in a sense that if you switch targets with a key press, and your point man will fire at the target selected if that target is within range. And you can also set different firing modes for your weapons, such as full auto, semi-automatic, single shot, and if the weapon, of course, if the weapon has different firing modes. Now you can also use the compass at the top to move about and to the right position. This is the tactical view, where we can split the team, we can give separate orders, call in support, set up waypoints, and so on. And this controls this gives a detailed overview, a top-down view, including also the line of sight arcs, as you can see there, for the different team members. And you can give certain orders from this view as well. This is mostly interested in splitting the team. So if we split the team like here, you can see that the team is now split into two separate firing teams, and that we are now in control of SEAL Team A. So we can also set different types of behaviors, such as a stealth and so on. And this overview also has the patrol route overlaid, which is a good thing to keep for keeping track of that you're on target. So you can also call in different types of support units from here, such as in this case the Seawolf helicopters here. So we can order a helo attack. We can also order extraction
if we need immediate extraction. And now since we split the team, you can see one half of the team wandering away on their own, and there are different positions as well that you can take. If we're talking about gameplay mechanics here, you can have crouched, you could have prone position, you can stand up, and in the prone position, your targeting capability will increase, as well as your ability to hit the target, the stability of your weapon. But it will limit your line of sight. So there we have an enemy, and you can see we have a white targeting reticule on that enemy. These range from the color of the reticule will indicate the distance, with white being considered far away and thus not very likely to hit, whereas yellow is better and can get even closer than that, but you normally want to keep it on like at least yellow, so you need to get close enough to be able to be within like an effective range of your currently selected weapon. Now we ordered a Helo Strike. We can see the helicopters on the way in. Let's see if they can actually provide some help here. But you can see that the battlefield, or the combat zone, is dynamic in a sense that there's no, you have an ability to use your in this case close air support. There you can see the shoppers doing their work, but now also you have the team members will also handle themselves more or less autonomously, unless you give them specific orders, but they will find targets, they will call out for medical assistance, the medic will give medical assistance, and so on. So your job as point man is basically to lead patrol and to spot any enemies and traps and point them out. You can also see here the use of the hand signals here. So we tell everyone to target that specific enemy and to fire at will. So these are all keyboard shortcuts to give different hand signals to the team, which correspond to different orders. You can also see the tracers. Tracers are, and here you can also see the bullet drop in action, where the actual physics simulation goes into play, where the bullets are affected by wind and bullet drop and so on. So as you can see, it's not as modern as like a modern tactical shooter, but you can see clearly how all of the parts that makes up a modern tactical shooter is actually present here, all in 1980, or back in 1992, which is very, very impressive. As to why this game didn't sell quite as well as you would have hoped, for a game this revolutionary, is completely unknown to me. Why it didn't sell better, and it's quite sad actually, because it did many neat and modern things for its time. And that was our look at SEAL Team, or the grandfather of the tactical shooter, if you will. And I hope you find it and play it, because it's a really interesting game. So thank you for watching this brief expose of the game.